recognize you from out in Eva Beach, right? Thank you. Were you already here on campus, or did you come in for this? Holy cow. You win. Anybody else come from as far as Eva Beach? Okay. Excellent. Well, you, my young friends, take the medal for the biggest trip. These are actually pictures which right now as we wait for maybe one more person to come in, I'm showing some slides from the Eva Beach Boys and Girls Club. We have a program there called Computer Guides. And these are children that are building a GNU Linux server that was installed at Hahaioni Elementary for a computer lab we gave them. I'll explain how all that works in a second. But all these pictures are of children ranging from 9 to 14 who are building a very nice high-end GNU Linux server. And it's not often that Eva Beach children build high technology gifts. They go to Hawaii Kai, and that's what HOSEF sets itself out to do. And the sun was good to me. A couple of these shots, it was coming right in and lighting them up. And it was special.
So did you change everything to Linux?
What's that?
Everything's open source already?
Yep, yeah, the computer you're seeing run right now, and this would probably be a good beginning. Is that welcome everyone. My name is Scott Belford, and I am very glad that you've taken your, Thursday evening to come in and join me. I run a charitable nonprofit here in Hawaii called the Hawaii Open Source Education Foundation. And if you haven't gotten one already, let me give you a little subtle picture story of what we try to do, and a card also so you know how to reach me. Okay. I started this charity actually right here at the University of Hawaii. I like to say that HOSEF was started by a pile of discarded computers, because while finishing my MBA, the School of Business was throwing out an awful lot of computers, and I got a little sick and tired of reading every day about how our schools didn't have enough technology and how we were failing to build a sustainable and innovative tech economy, words that I was using 4 years ago before the State of the State address. And I began to bring those computers in. And at the time I worked for a company called Price Busters, and I traded out a little salary for some warehouse space, and I began to bring in those computers, and it would have open workshops where we would fix them up, and then we would donate them to schools and nonprofits and set up computer labs. I like to say that there's two kinds of people in this world, those who find problems and those who find solutions. And it is easy to find problems, but I like to find solutions. And so I said, gee, we got these excess computers being thrown out. I read the paper, and we're hurting for innovation, we're hurting for technology, we're hurting for access in our schools. I'm going to start something where I can take the waste, give somebody the tax write-off so it's good for business, and get it into the hands of who need them the most. And that's 17% of it. You can give somebody a computer and you get to do this. But unless you have the life-sustaining skills and some sense of self-reliance, you haven't done anybody any good. And so in addition to working out a way to donate computers to people who need them, I've worked very hard to build, to make it possible for someone to learn for free. I guess what I could have done was say, hey, I'm going to donate computers, and hey, if the price is right, I'll train you. But every Saturday in the McKinley Community School for Adults, right around the corner from here, we do free workshops and classes. And twice a week at the Eva Beach Boys and Girls Club, I run a program I've created called Computer Guns. Because when somebody gives me a computer, I can do one of three things with it. I can make it into a thin client or a server, which I'll show you in the second half, or I can make it into a standalone workstation. Computer Guts is a program I designed that's 5 levels. Level 1, you learn the components of a computer. You learn that a computer is made up of components like your body's made up of components, and that collectively these components make a system and it can do something. Level 2, we disassemble and reassemble a computer. Level 3, you learn about personal responsibility. I give you your own computer. You take it apart, you put it together again. Level 4, you install software on the computer. If you learned in level 1 that software and hardware are 2 separate things. In level 5, you type a 1-page essay, 12-point font, no skipping lines, and you take the computer home and you keep it. Guess what gender my most successful students are? And guess what age range my most successful students are?
14.
By 14, they're starting to get kind of hormonal and boy crazy. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old girls, it's unreal. You give them a Phillips head screwdriver, you don't tell them what they can't do, and they will disassemble a computer. And I don't mean just a little bit. You got to figure out, depending on what chassis, how to get the chassis open. You got to figure out how to remove everything and put it back in. And I did not expect that when I started Computer Guts. So I wanted a program where I could give kids computers and give them some skills. But I figured I'd be teaching a bunch of teenage boys. The boys are too distracted, the older girls are too distracted, and it's the young female mind, the overlooked component of America's failing science and technology industry, the young female mind. So that's been very special. And all of this is possible because of free and open source software, which is a big part of what I'm going to talk to you about. I could never have gone to taken those computers from UH and put them into schools. I could never have created Computer Guts without the ability to put free software on the computers. Because I am not close with the Gates Foundation, and they don't write me checks, and Microsoft doesn't want to give you software for free, and I don't believe in building cultures of dependency. So for me to take a donated computer and put a Microsoft product on it begins to feed a culture of addiction that is neither good for Hawaii nor any other developed or developing economy in this world. So when I have shipped computers to the Philippines, or Western Samoa, or Cambodia, we put free and open source software on it. And as you will see tonight, if you know how to use this thing, a keyboard, and if you know how to use this thing, a mouse, you can use free and open source software in spite of what anybody's ever said about it being hard or different. It's a graphical user interface. What I'm going to show you is how, within 20 minutes, I can take this computer right there, and I can take one of these CDs and install every program that you see on this computer here. This includes education applications. A great interactive periodic table called Calcium. It includes, and I learned my periodic table from a book, from the index in the back. But if I could have clicked beryllium and seen the atomic overview and seen a picture and seen the atomic model and seen the chemical data and the specific energies, some miscellaneous data, and actually seen what the spectrum was, because I learned about spectral analysis of chemicals, but that didn't mean anything to me. The picture says something to me. If I could have had that, I might have grown up to be something special. But our kids can't. So you get things like calcium, an anagram game, fraction game, interactive geometry game. You get some real games, educational things though. You get some graphical programs, Things like Tux Paint, which is a lot like KidPix, but better and free. GIMP, something that does everything that Adobe Photoshop does and then some. Blender. This Blender, a version of Blender was used extensively for Final Fantasy, which was rendered here in Hawaii on a Linux cluster. Your internet applications and an Office suite. Anyone here ever heard of Openoffice?
Yeah.
Okay, runs on a Mac, runs on a PC, runs on a Linux box. It's free, and here's what I love about it. Because free and open source software is about sharing. It's about not locking you into anything. It's about collaborating. I can use Openoffice to, for those friends of mine that are still using Microsoft, and one friend of mine is using Microsoft Word 97 or 2000 XP, or another friend's using Word 95, another friend's using Word 6.0, I can save it for each of them. Because even though they each end in .doc, they are not interoperable. Why are they not interoperable? Because then you wouldn't have to buy another one. And how do we make somebody the richest person in the world? We make you feel like you're not worthy of your computer. And then we make you upgrade to something that you don't already have to have what everybody else has. And you're going to do what your friend has because there's safety in numbers. How is this culture of free and open source software different? And why is it different, and why does it exist? That's the story I'm going to tell you now. There used to be Unix, and it was a mainframe, and it had terminals. And you used the terminal to log into the mainframe, and that was your computer. Unix was too expensive to take home. Unix was too expensive to own. There was a gentleman at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology named Richard Stallman, who said in 1984, I'd like my own. I cannot buy it. Maybe I'll write it. I know a little bit. I know how to program software. So maybe what I'll do is I'll write some code. Because underneath all these programs is software code that gets compiled to make the hardware do what we wanted to do with a mouse and a keyboard. I'll leave it at that. But you got to write code. So Richard Stallman could write code, and he wrote some code. There was this thing called the internet at the time. It wasn't browsed by web browsers, but universities were connected. So one could share and collaborate. Richard put his code up, made it available. Said to the world, hello world, I would like to write a free version of Unix. This is what I've done so far. Would you like to join in? And other people decided that they would join in, and they would help to write the code, and they would develop the code, and little by little programs were written, like Emacs and the GNU compiler, and everything that evolved into what we see on this desktop now. Why is it called Linux, though? In between the hardware and in between the programs we use is an operating system. And the stuff that Richard Stallman and others are writing, which they call GNU. GNU is a recursive acronym for GNU is not Unix. GNU, GNU is not Unix. They played around and had a good time with it. But the one thing they didn't write in writing all the user space applications that sit above the hardware was the kernel, or the operating system. But a fellow named Linus Torvalds did in '91. He said, gee, I want a free version of Unix. I'm going to start with this thing called Minix, which is taught in universities, and I'm going to improve it. So he wrote what is now called Linux. Now, it disturbs Mr. Stallman an awful lot that we call all of this Linux. And understandably so, because he has devoted a lifetime to free software in the GNU project. So he prefers that we call it GNU Linux. That's what this is. Any of us can write software. Any of us can write software. We can put it up on the internet, and we can say to the world, hello world, I'm writing software for this project, would you like to take part? But how do we keep people to share back? How do you institutionalize sharing, the freedom to share? That was probably the bigger contribution that Mr. Stallman made when he wrote the GNU General Public License, the GPL. Most free and open source software applications are released with the GPL. And when you release your software that you share with the world of the GPL, you copyleft it. Don't copyright it, you copyleft it. And that was a term that I was driving them and dropping them off earlier. Mr. Stallman, who we brought here for our conference last week, is staying with me, and so we were talking, and he just said, you know, one day copyleft, just the expression came to me, you know, and it makes great sense. And copyleft says, I write software, I put it up on the internet. You see my software and you contribute code to it. You have to share back. Copyright says, you get a hold of my code and I know you got my code and you're messing with my code, I'm suing you. That's mine already. No sharing, it's mine. Well, the exact opposite is, this is mine and I want you to share it. And if you can contribute to make it better and don't share back, well, that's bad. So, but how can that do anything good for anybody? We're all greedy people, and we're not going to share and collaborate, and we're all just looking out for number one. So that's not going to lead to anything good, except that it did. Except that if you go to a little company like IBM and buy one of their servers, they're going to sell you a server with GNU Linux on it. They're not going to sell you a server. I mean, you can buy one running something else, but they're not going to sell you a server. I mean, the major stuff they're going to sell you is running GNU Linux. If you buy a server from Sun Microsystems, it's powered by Solaris. Sun has made Solaris free and open source software. Why? Because they can hire only so many people to write software. But the world has people for free. And people who contribute around the world contribute for reasons other than the fact that they might get fired or they don't write good code. They contribute because they want to. Their motivation can be multifaceted, but it's self-motivation. So this paradigm of software development, protected by the concept of copyleft, has led to distributions of GNU Linux like Ubuntu. I just threw out lots of words there. Distributions. Any one of us can write software. Any one of us can write code and have others collaborate and make a really good program that is an interactive map of the stars. But how does it get out? Because it's free software, and think of the world of free software like a big globe. Tens of thousands of applications. Companies can choose to distribute that software on a usable medium, like a compact disk. So sometimes if you sniffed around or heard a little bit about Linux or free software, you've heard of the different distributions. Ubuntu, Fedora, Debian, SUSE, Mandrake. It's confusing because there's choice and choice and choice. And we're used to Microsoft version 1, version 2, version 3. You know, so that's our choice. It's more limited. This is an ecosystem of choice, but it can be confusing. But what I am free to do from this world of software is I am free to distribute whatever subset I think would be relevant. A student here at the University of Hawaii, Warren Dagami, said, I'm going to distribute software that I'll call Fedora. I'm going to take what Red Hat, the company in North Carolina, releases, but I'm going to release it for free because I can. I'm going to call it Fedora, and I'm going to work on really cutting-edge applications, the newest and the latest and the greatest of everything. And that project did really well, because after Warren graduated from UH, Red Hat hired him. And he lives in Boston now, and he works with Red Hat. And Red Hat is a company that sells GNU Linux to enterprises and universities and people all around the world. And they rolled the Fedora project into their company. So now they have people working on Fedora around the world, kind of like as a research and development project. What's the latest? What's the greatest? How good can it be? And then Red Hat rolls in from all of that. What is the most stable? The versions that seem to work the best. And they'll sell it to you with a 5-year commitment to maintain it and manage it. So that if you're an IT manager, you know you can buy a Red Hat Enterprise. You know that for 5 years it's going to work and it's going to be supported and you're not going to get fired. But it's a product of freedom with some innovation and some guaranteed support. Another distribution is Ubuntu. This was started by Mark Shuttleworth. Mark Shuttleworth made a lot of money in the dot-com days. He paid the Soviets to take him to space. Then he went back to South Africa and he began the Ubuntu project. Ubuntu is a distribution that kind of built on that concept of Linux, or GNU Linux, that's easy enough for my mother. It's something that I can put on her computer and she gets this. A set number of applications, an easy to operate, an easy to navigate screen, and it's simplified. But there's freedom to distribute whatever you want. And so if you ever hear that word, it's confusing. And that's the stumbling block for so many people. So they hear about GNU Linux, they go someplace to download it, and they can't choose what to download. Choice is, unfortunately, not something we're accustomed to. Tonight, I am going to cross you over to the land of freedom using Ubuntu. This is a distribution that I like. It is easy, it is fun, it is safe, and it's a good start. And on this one compact disk are all the programs that you need to do most everything that you do day in and day out on your computer. You can burn this CD on your own through mirrors. Because this is an internet-enabled paradigm of software development, the way that the software is distributed is through mirrors. This is our web server. It's here at the University of Hawaii. When you go to HOSEF.org and you click mirrors, you can go and choose to download CD from one of many distributions of Linux. And this is where things can get confusing. NetBSD, OpenBSD, Canopix, K12LTSP, FreeBSD, CentOS, Debian, Fedora, SUSE, Ubuntu. Well, Scott said he liked Ubuntu, and that worked pretty good, so I'll just click that one. And that's a good first start. I use Debian. Ubuntu is built off of Debian, but they simplify it and make it easier. Oh, but oh no. You can click it again, and I'm going to show you the downside of free and open source software is that I'm having to think for myself already. Enough, you're hurting my head. What do? I probably need to put up a good web page on HOSEF for the first-time visitors to say this is what we would recommend. Usually I'll use, look for a number that seems safe. Maybe not the newest, maybe not the latest. This right here is version 6.06. So you would click there, and then you would choose the ISO that you want. ISO is a file format. All your computer files end with 3 letters. This can be confusing. But the ones that end in ISO, that's what you burn onto a CD. So this is where you would go to do it on your own. Take one away from here tonight if you would like. But you can always burn one for a friend or copy one of these for free. Not because you're stealing it, not because no one knows that you've done it, so it's free. It's free by law. So that's what you would do if you wanted to download one. You would click here. You would choose to save it. You would say OK. And thanks to the amazing bandwidth that we have on campus, I'm downloading something that at home would take me an hour in less than 1 minute. I sure wish I lived on campus. But I don't. Don't expect this to happen when you go to download it at home. You will not bring this down at 10 megs a second. You will wish that you could bring it down at 10 megs a second. So that's what HOSEF is. That's a little overview without getting too deep in what free software is. And the end result of what someone like Richard Stallman had in mind in the mid-'80s is this, a CD that I could put into a computer, and that computer that I can reboot and tell it to install this software.
Is this the operating system too?
This is the operating system and all the programs. So when we call it GNU Linux, the Linux is the operating system, and the GNU part are lots of the other programs. And it includes things like Openoffice and GIMP and just lots of different programs. What questions do we have right now?
Since this is a requirement, we'll basically going to have distribution is on the PC.
I mean, you can run something like Ubuntu comfortably on a computer that's maybe a P2 400 and faster. You want to have 160, really 256 megs of RAM or more. There are distributions of GNU Linux that run great on a 486 or on a Penny 133 with 64 megs of RAM. One of those is called Puppy Linux, and it'll knock your socks off. It is fast. It's got a ton of utilities, and it runs amazing on an older computer. But you know, my mom wants something that looks a little nicer and is designed for a faster graphics card, and so I go with Ubuntu. But Puppy Linux will blow you away. And we use that a lot just for diagnostic purposes, and on some computers we get that are just too slow. Now the other question would be, where did this computer come from? I didn't buy it. I didn't buy that computer. I didn't buy that computer. This computer is here because HOSEF is here to keep things out of the landfill. And when people go looking to do what they can do with their old computers, they will go to the city and county Opala website, or they will Google for Honolulu or Hawaii and computer recycling, and they'll see that that's something we'll do, and that we'll take in their old computer. So this is one that was bound for the Waimanalo Gulch, and now it's here before you, and it's a good computer. Why do we have it? I'd say 1 out of 3 computers we get because someone gets a bad virus or something with their Microsoft breaks, and they blame the computer and they call me. And I welcome that. And I'm thankful to the failure of Microsoft to create a safe and productive computing environment, because it means that good things come to us, and we do the right thing with them. We used to take in everything for free, but then I exhausted my home equity line of credit doing my best to do everything with these things for free. And so this year we've begun to do what other computer recyclers do, and we say, we will take in your computer and your computer hardware, but we need to charge what a computer recycler charges, 95 cents a pound. That way, if you're one of those people who's really nice to me and tells me how great your computer works, and you drop it off and you leave and it's broken, I can at least dispose of it properly. And if it's a good working computer, then I have a way to sustain our mission to go take it to places like the Boys and Girls Club, or Waianae Intermediate, or the Kaka'aka Homeless Shelter through friends like our friend Bill back there, and get them into the hands of people who need them. We have a big e-waste problem in Hawaii, and I'll touch on that more in the second half. But for now, this is a landfill-bound computer. It's an Athlon at 1.5 gigahertz, 0.5 gigabyte of RAM. It's, you know, a nice box, but it's also a 7-year-old box, you know. That's what I'm gonna install on right now. Does anybody have another question?
When you talk about everybody sharing
Yes.
and giving back and writing the code and how everybody can do that, don't we have a zillion choices there too on what language you're gonna write in?
I think most people write their stuff in C or C++.
And what
Okay.
if you don't know those languages?
Then I guess you cannot write the code. Yeah, I mean, you can share by just donating to your favorite project, you know, so sometimes, you know, like a lot of the projects have gotten good about putting a PayPal link there. So if you go to openoffice.org, you know, you can't code, hey, you can give us $2. I mean, that's where I am. I can't code. I don't know how to write software. So my give back has been this little thing. But if your give back is simply to tell somebody a good thing about it, then that's plenty too. So of course it's not expected that you have to like rewrite code. That's a good question. I think most of it was written in Java, of course, and most of it's C++. Think of another question if you have it. Ask any time. The better I understand about what you're wondering, the better I can kind of sharpen my presentation.
You guys have a minimum standard of what you accept with Linux? On Mac and PCs?
I mean, probably, I've begun to try, I haven't made it official, but we probably try to keep it at a Pentium 2. But, no, I've never turned anybody away with anything. Most of the Pentium 1s that are out there, people have brought us already. So now the things. What's that?
I still have one.
Okay.
It works, but I'm not using it.
Well, I'm going to show you the magic that one can work with the Pentium 1 here in the second half. Hopefully you'll agree with me. There's probably never a reason to throw any of them out. They're very usable, but you have to find the community center or the school that will accept a computer lab that uses it. But I will show you in the second half how you can make a Pentium 1 run faster than any computer you can buy right now. Okay, I will show you in the second half how you can make a Pentium 1. I have one here on the floor, Pentium 133, run faster than anything you can buy. So what I've done is I've restarted the computer. The computer is set to boot from the compact disk.
Does this override any Microsoft programs?
If you have a computer that already has Microsoft installed, you'll see in the installation process, it does a good job of recognizing what's already there, and you could actually have Ubuntu install itself next to your Microsoft operating system. This can involve partitioning your drive, so you kind of move all the data into one part of the drive. It'll create some free space, and it'll put Ubuntu there, and then it'll modify your boot loader so that when you restart the computer, you can choose Microsoft or GNU Linux. But any time you're partitioning your hard drive and moving all those bits around, it's good to know that you've got a backup. And so I've never had trouble doing it. But, you know, my advice would be if you're going to install it on your computer that's got Microsoft on it, make sure you backed up your stuff, because you don't want your hard drive to suddenly fail from all that hard work and be without your data.
A lot of our toys that we have, like PDAs and the like, require, you know, a certain amount of interaction with, you know, for like things like hot syncing them. Has the Linux world kept up with that kind of movement? Because I don't see anything.
It has. You can, I'll show you the program evolution when we begin to do the installation, and you can hot sync your Palm Pilot with your Linux box, and it'll sync up your data. So there is, with respect to the Palm world, a way to hot sync. A lot of your cell phones are beginning to run on GNU Linux or the Symbian OS is the OS that's on a lot of, I think, the Ericsson and Nokia phones. That's free software. So the kind of almost in the beginning it was that Linux had to work itself around what was out there. But now the Linux kernel is so good that more and more embedded devices run off of it. Linksys routers, wireless access points, more and more. Which makes it a lot easier when you connect the two for them to talk to one another. Now I have just booted this CD. It looks the exact same as earlier. The desktop's a little different, and now there's an icon called Install. So you're at home. You've got a computer you wanted to put this on. You have taken home one of these CDs, you've booted your computer, and then you go and you say, what do I do next? Well, you want to install it, so you double-click Install. What English would you, what language do you want to communicate with your computer in? Well, because this is about sharing and collaborating, and not making you buy the Polish version of Microsoft because you want to do it in Polish, or the Chinese version, or the Japanese version, you can pick your language here at Start. Esperanto, if you like. All these languages. I am ethnocentric, unfortunately, so all I can speak is English, so I got to install in English.
What happens if you pick that top one that said no?
No localization.
I don't know.
I don't know. You will then have to be the one to
It'll ask you again what you want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So secondary, okay, where are you in the world? What time zone do you want me to set myself for? Okay, easy enough, I'll choose Honolulu. What kind of keyboard am I using? There's different keyboards. We'll stick with American English. Click forward. Who are you? What name do you want to log in as? HOSEF. I always at this point tell people, I don't, I want you to use free software. I want you to leave here saying, gee, that's good stuff. I want to use free software. But if you never change and you always use Microsoft or you always use Mac, always use a good password. Not your pet's name, not your mom's name, not your birthday. Think of some algorithm. Think of some numerical sequence you like. Think of some place or some word or some food you like. And think of a way to marry them that's unique to you, that you can always remember, but it isn't so easy to guess. That way your password is your password. So this is where we would, if we had Microsoft on here already, we would do this. How do I want to partition the disk? I'm installing to a hard drive. It's a disk. Most of us, I think all of us in here know what an album looks like. We are not of the generation where we don't know what a piece of vinyl is. So think of there being a big disc in there, and we're just like taking the first 3 or 4 tracks, and we're squinching them into the second half of the album. And now we're going to have some free space. If you had Microsoft on here already, that's what option 1 would be. To resize the disk as you wanted, and make the new partition whatever size you wanted it to be. This is a 70 gig disk, so we could make the new partition whatever we wanted it to be, and the rest would be Microsoft. In this case, because the partitioning and resizing step eats up time, I can't meet my 20-minute commitment to you, so I'm going to erase the whole disk. And I'm going to click forward.
So you do that same thing with Mac?
If you were installing onto a Mac, and there's a Mac version of Ubuntu over there, you would have the same question, which is, hey, do you want to resize your existing Mac installation and use the free space, or do you want to wipe the whole thing out? Because all computers run off of a hard drive, so you get the choice on this step to resize what's there, or to erase the whole thing.
You have to make sure it's not all fragmented.
That's probably a good idea, but not necessary. But probably a good idea. In that way, you're not leaving it up to the installer to refragment. I would imagine that your operating system kind of knows where it's put the fragments on its own? That's a very good question. I'm gonna get a better answer next time somebody asks me that. But I would say to be safe, I would do it within your Windows installation first.
Bring the files up forward.
What's that?
Tracking is to bring the files up forward, that way you can download the lyrics faster.
Okay, okay, so yeah, rather than being kind of spread out down here
Yeah.
in that free space,
You know, the
maybe,
system.
yeah.
Forward.
Can you do that on a Mac too?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never defragged my Mac.
Yeah.
You just, there's just a little thing where you get the system thing, you bring up and it defracts for it.
Not later, come
That's what, like under applications disk utility or something?
Yeah.
Something?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this would then destroy, or that's why it said back up the Microsoft data. It destroys permanently, there's no retrieval?
Oh, no, I mean, if you choose to resize and keep both of them on there, then you'll, yeah, it'll be what we call a dual boot machine, where you can use both Linux and Microsoft. And I would say that 99.993% of the time, there's no problem. But I don't want you to be that .007 and say, well, what happened to my, my Microsoft stuff? But it's a really well-refined process. I was repartitioning my Microsoft stuff in '99 and 2000. The tools are so much more mature now that you really can choose to resize, and you can have both Linux and Microsoft on the same computer. Yes, sir.
Does this have ability to scan, like scan disk?
You could, but the file system that's used, you don't need to do that like you do with Microsoft. Every 10 or 20 boots, when you've installed Linux, your system will automatically go through and check the integrity of your file system. But whereas Microsoft uses the FAT or the FAT32 or the NTFS, this gets into how you write your data onto the drive. The file system used by Linux doesn't really necessitate the need to do that. It's much more efficient at working with bits and pieces of data that might be distributed across the drive.
So it's redundant, or it preserves. What happens if it writes on a bad sector?
That's
How does it
part
count?
of, I mean, the file system check kind of keeps that in mind. And so your file system is looking for, kind of in the background, looking for and running through a file system check to make sure that you don't have those bad sectors. You can always do it manually. You can always, if you want to, go through and do a check. But I never have. And is there redundancy in the writing of the bits to the sector? So if a sector goes bad, do you lose the data? It can be recovered. If you run a file, when you reboot the computer and it's running a file system check, if there's a bad sector that something's been written to, it will recover it for you. But those times that's come up for me, it's just on that 20th boot when it automatically runs through and it just says, I found this, do you want me to fix it? And I say yes. So, but that's nothing, there's a different way that the Linux ext3s writes. It's a journalizing file system. So there's always a journal that's written independent of where stuff is written, so your data can always be recovered. So I guess you could say it's kind of redundant. Redundant means it's done on two different drives to me. But this is what's called a journalizing file system. So it's like a bookkeeper that says, okay, I've written this data there, this data there, this data there. And every few seconds it updates itself. So if you lose power suddenly in this middle of the write, your journal's still intact and it'll say, okay, this was supposed to go there, I'll put it there. So that's a deeper question. So nobody in here get afraid of that. You'll be fine, your data won't go away. You have more data integrity with your hard drive using the file system used by GNU Linux than from the Microsoft world. Apple uses a journalizing file system, and Vista will use a journalizing file system. Yes, ma'am.
Does it work the same as Microsoft Windows? Do you need firewall? Do you install firewall?
Well,
Do you install additional programs? For
you,
other purposes?
I'm going to show you how you can install different programs. Any computer connected to the internet, you want to have it behind a firewall. But if you have gone and installed this computer at home and you've connected it directly to your cable modem, your DSL modem, so it's the first line of defense against the internet, you don't have the security vulnerabilities out of the box. You can take a Windows 98 machine or a Windows XP machine, and if you install it and connect it to the internet before you install Service Pack 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and install Norton antivirus, you can become Trojaned without doing anything. There are, every second, your computers are being, every computer on the internet is being scanned for vulnerabilities. If you've run things like, what's that? I used to use it when I used Windows. The something zone at fire. Zone alarm, yeah. So if you've ever run something like zone alarm, you can see, oh my God, get away from my door, quit knocking on my firewall trying to come in. There's nothing to knock on to let yourself in by default with the Linux installation. By design, the software is infinitely more secure than the world of Microsoft that we've become accustomed to. Firewalls are good, but you're not going to have the same need to be concerned if your first line of defense is in fact your home computer.
Can you set up an old computer as a proxy?
Yes.
So that you basically don't need a software firewall, but you're using a hardware firewall?
You could make great use for those old Pentium ones, because there are distributions of Linux, GNU Linux, that are automatic firewalls that do a really good job of, you put them in a computer with 2 network cards, you install it, it'll say which one are you going to connect to the internet, which one are you going to connect to your local area network, do you want me to pass out IP addresses. There's distributions you can use where you can set up things like Dan's Guardian and Squid Guard to protect your children or your family or your church or your school from going to the bad websites. So it's a really good use for an older computer. You could set this up to be a proxy and all those kind of fancier things, but you can always use an older computer. And that's a good question. But that gets into the more, okay, what can I do next? I put it on my own home computer. There's a lot of projects out there that make it very easy within a matter of 10 minutes to turn an old Pentium into your own home firewall. Now, some people I know don't like to do that because, hey, it's more electricity running that big thing. I can go spend 30 or 40 bucks and buy one. But if you want the control, at my house, I have an old machine that I use as my firewall. And it also checks and scans for incoming viruses. And it also checks and scans for spam, and it filters them all. And then if it gets to go through, it goes to my next box. And then it takes incoming mail, and it puts it in different folders. But I feel like, I've got nothing better to do at times than to check and read my logs and watch my firewall box and just be tuned into it. And it's for a small business, it's the way to go. It gives you a lot more control, and if you're the system administrator, you get a lot more, you're much more aware of what's going on, with your network and who's trying to do what, and you get more control there. There's a lot of distributions that do that. For email, now notice that while I'm installing, I still have a functioning live operating system. So it's installing, I've got a few minutes left, but I can also turn around and open something like Evolution, this email application. So you can, if you don't want to install Linux to your hard drive, you can boot off of one of these CDs, and you can just run live off of the CD, meaning that you're loading all your programs and all your software from the compact disc. It's faster when you copy all the data from the compact disk to the hard drive. Because the hard drive is faster, it can do more, talk faster, it can load your programs faster. But if you want to run your software off the compact disk drive, you can.
If you have a computer with a damaged hard disk, then would you be able to do CD, a lot of CD operations?
You sure would. That's a very good use. I mean, if it's fast enough and you like it, you don't want to throw it away, you can do that. So this is evolution. This looks and feels like Microsoft Outlook. You can sync it to your Palm Pilot, and it's free. But it'll take a little longer to load because I'm loading off the CD. You got your mail, you got your contacts, you got calendar system.
If you open up a live CD and then you want to change some data in it, and then store it right there, where does it go? I mean, how does that work? Because the data on a CD-ROM is sacrosanct, right?
It is.
So where does it go if there's no hard drive?
It's all running off the RAM. Now, if you want to kind of coexist where you can like have a roaming profile, some distributions of GNU Linux like Xandros. And Xandros does a good job of giving you, you take a live CD, but then you can use a USB keychain. And you can go to any computer you want. And when you get the login screen, one of your options when you log in is log in with your portable profile. And then when you load up the desktop from the CD, it'll read your USB keychain and get your email settings, get all your personal files, get your bookmarks, all your personal stuff, so that any computer you go to that you can plug a USB keychain into and boot off a CD is like your own personal computer. So you kind of create a roaming profile. Nowadays with Google Docs and Gmail, if you really want a roaming profile, and of course Google is one of the largest Linux clusters in the world, it's all GNU Linux. You can let all your data reside there. But things like Xandros and the portable USB keychain, you can encrypt it, with 256, encryption, so that you don't have to worry about if you lose it, somebody cracking it, unless they're with the Chinese government. Have the skills to do that. Done it recently, so, or the NSA.
Maybe it's the same thing.
Yeah. There's a lot of fun theories there. Well, I mean, in little to no time, we've now copied all the software. The next 18% is some configuration stuff. And then I'm going to reboot this computer, and it's going to be running live off the hard drive. And I will have turned the previously discarded computer, or a computer that wasn't working that well, or a computer where I couldn't afford to buy all the software I wanted, into a really good GNU Linux computer. And then what I'm going to do is give it an IP address, and then I'll show you how you can add software, because that was one of your questions, is okay, can I add software like I can with Microsoft? There's a better, easier, more amazing way to add software with free open source software. Because this is an internet-enabled paradigm of distributing and making software. So I'm going to use a package manager that's going to query different servers around the world for other pieces of software that I might want to put on the computer.
Is there an emulator?
Yes. There is a thing called WINE, and that's an acronym for Wine is not an emulator, and that lets you run Windows applications. So this is such a funny name in many ways. It's like, okay, already, you gotta have a Windows computer run Wine. Go ahead, Winer. Because you can run your Windows apps with it. If wine doesn't run it well enough, in the world of free meats, let's make some money, Jeremy White and the crossover team have taken wine and made it a little bit better, and they sell crossover office. You can install crossover office on your new Linux computer, and you can run Microsoft Office or Internet Explorer and a whole host of Microsoft applications. And because, unfortunately, a lot of websites are written where you need Internet Explorer, or, you know, for good reason, a lot of offices, and everyone's using Microsoft Office, and yeah, Openoffice is great, but, you know, you kind of get the best of both worlds, where you can have the safety and the sanctuary of a stable and secure operating system like the new Linux, but you can still run some Microsoft apps within crossover Office.
Do you run Microsoft apps like Word documents, like some kind of things that you get like macro viruses? Does that affect the Linux operating system too?
Not in the same way.
Because I know that Macintosh or the Macintosh have that problem.
Yep. No, because you're not gonna, the older Macs did, but now, you know, the OS 10 generation Macs, because they're based, Macs are based on free software. The reason why, one of the reasons why Apple's had this amazing turnaround is that OS 10 is based on FreeBSD. FreeBSD is like Linux. It's an operating system that sits above the computer and between all the programs that you use. And FreeBSD is really wonderful, very stable. And what the folks at Apple said years ago was, why spend all of our time and intellectual resources writing an operating system? Nobody buys Apple for the operating system. They buy it for the programs. Now they buy it because it hooks up with the iPod, or because it has iTunes, or because of, you know, the yummy iCandy, the iPhoto, the iMovie. So let's spend all of our resources writing that and not writing the operating system. So when they began to use FreeBSD, they entered a much more secure world.
Have virus writers invaded Linux yet?
You know, I mean, you can always try. It's harder. The design of, you know, GNU Linux is inherently more secure. It's inherently more secure for two reasons I'll restart now. Number one, this is modeled off of Unix. Okay, and Unix was a multi-user operating system, meaning that the root user, the administrative user, the user, the profile that had all the access to everything was not what you logged in as. You would log in as with a username, what we would call a non-privileged account. And Linux or GNU Linux distributions are designed the same way. You don't log in as root or as administrator. You log in as a non-privileged user. So someone can send you something and say, hey, I sent you this file, open it. And it could be a script that's designed to turn your computer into a spam bot. But it's going to be harder, and you're going to have to make more conscious decisions for it to get there, because you're going to have to enter your administrator username and password for it to run. And if you download something that asks you to install it, and then asks you to enter your administrator's username and password, and you choose to do it, God save you, because you know you don't fully understand the risks of the internet, and there is no operating system that will keep you secure. Where it's different than Microsoft is that, at least until later revisions of XP, you would run your Microsoft operating system as a privileged user, as the person who could install anything without permission. So that's one level. The other level is that free and open source software, believe it or not, by virtue of having your code out there at all times for everybody to see, makes it inherently more safe. Because anyone can, at any time, see the vulnerabilities. Yet, anyone at any time can see the vulnerabilities. You got good guys and you got bad guys. Your black hats and your white hats, so to speak. And there will be exploits. Software is a work in process. whether you're running Mac, Windows, or Linux, you always want to run software update. You always want to update your software because a vulnerability will be found by somebody. But the development model of free and open source software is such that the bugs are found sooner and fixed more quickly in the GNU Linux environment. Also, it could be March 29th that we've gotten word from our security team that there are serious vulnerabilities in Internet Explorer. The thing is I've got conference calls with the analysts on March 31st. It's the end of the quarter already. Earnings were okay. They weren't bad. And I don't need bad press right now. So you can wait. You got an unsecured computer and tough titties. You're waiting. I'll let you know on April 1st. Okay? So there's that element of there's not the same motive necessarily to keep things to yourself. Now, the Pacific Telecommunication Conference had a debate with Redcom, a telco carrier, about this. And his belief was, you know, we want to keep our code proprietary. We don't want the bad guys seeing it. But my pushback on that is that at least the world knows if it's there and it's going to be fixed. Because what bad guy is going to go out of his way to tell you that he's violated your code unless he wants money from you? So it's cat and mouse. More people are writing viruses and Trojan horses for Linux than they used to, and they will continue to. It's not true to say that it's impenetrable, but by design, it's much harder. Now, the other thing that people then say is, yeah, Scott, let me go ahead and make your argument against me now. That's great. The real fact of the matter is that there are so many, or there's so few people using Linux on the desktop that you're not going to write for the easy target. Everybody's using Microsoft, so all the good virus writers are writing their viruses for Microsoft. Come on. But here's the fact of the matter. What would you say is like the most public presence of any company? Like what? How can anyone see anything about any company? Their webpage. So wouldn't it make sense then that the web pages, all those Linux web pages would be hacked most? Because the fact is, about 65% of the internet, 6.5 out of 10 web pages are served by an open source web server called Apache. So if the paradigm were true that we write for the most popular target, then there would be a disproportional number of violations against the Apache web server. After all, it is 65% of the internet. So of course, every company that's using an Apache web server, they're going to get violated and hosed all the time as they're out there. But there is a disproportional number of security breaches on the Microsoft IIS web server platform than there are on the Apache platform. So the fear, uncertainty, and doubt argument about viruses falls short when you think of the web server argument, because that's the most hackable, that is the easiest way to violate, that's the easiest way to penetrate, that's the easiest way to hold someone's feet to the fire, is you get ownership of their web page. But if you cannot, and in this case you cannot nearly as easily with Apache, the argument that many people have made just doesn't work. Now, usually you don't have to do what I'm doing. Most of you are using broadband at home. You don't have to put in an IP address. This is, in this room here, UH, just to kind of keep it locked down, you gotta put in the IP address. So don't be put off by this. If you're at home and you're using broadband, and you've installed your computer, and it's connected already to your cable modem or your router, you're going to get this stuff that is entered manually automatically, and you're going to be connected to the internet. So with that connection, let's just make sure I did it right before I try to open some things. I'm now running a computer that I just installed from scratch.
You should go teach, Oceana keyboard how to hook up Linux.
Yeah, they won't support it.
Oh, it does, I used, Susie Tech.
Yeah, I mean, it works, but you can't call and ask them for help.
Yeah, and they don't know how to, upgrade them, because
No.
they don't know about the, PDO and, the firewall in there. You have to enable the firewall first before they let you go.
Okay.
And you have to, set up the modem for that.
Oh, yeah, you gotta log into their modem,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, that's a pain, some of these newer modems, they're routers in themselves. So, all right, so everything that was there earlier is here. All the applications that I showed you earlier are here. They're freshly installed. You want Adobe Photoshop, now you got the GIMP. What can you do with the GIMP? Well, everything that you could do with Adobe Photoshop and then some.
So can you transfer them back and forth?
Yes, you can move images back and forth between the two.
You can say something as a PSD document in a Photoshop file, or not?
I believe so. Let's see real quick. I believe I can with the GIMP open.
Oh, really?
PSD. Okay.
Looks like you're, that's weird.
You can open all these different file formats. And when you get ready to save as, like anytime I'm working on something or I need to convert from one file format to another, I use the GIMP. Then I can save it as all these different image types.
You can save it for it later, you know.
Yeah. A lot of that's beyond me. I will tell you that one of the first projects we did was Kailua Redemption Academy. Pastor Rudy came to me, this is almost 5 years ago now. I used to live in Kailua, and he wanted to, he knew enough about Linux, he wanted to try it. I built a box for him to bless you and gave it to him. He liked it. They ordered the parts from Newegg. I got taught a class of teachers and students how to build their computers. We put Mandrake Linux on them, and I left them. Everything I do is volunteer, and I was busy working at Price Busters and didn't have time to teach them much more. But he asked me to come back a few months later to replace the power supply in one of the computers, and so I did. When I went in, the walls were covered with a lot of artwork from magazines. They had gone out and had, because they were doing a lot of photo work through there, they had cut out and covered the walls with these really amazing pictures, just to inspire the kids. That's really neat, Rudy. I see all these pictures, y'all, what magazine did you get them out of? Well, we didn't get them out of a magazine, Scott, the kids made those. The kids made those. Yeah, look. We got these digital cameras, and they went out and took pictures, and we plugged them in, and then we used the GIMP. Oh, the GIMP's great, Scott. And the kids they just figured it out. And so they did all these layers and these bleedings and this stuff that it just blew me away. Just blew me away. That's when I said to myself, damn, I gotta get more technology into the kids' hands, because they don't know what they can't do. They'll figure anything out. Instead of video games. And that's okay too, because you know what? With free and open source software, they can see the code. And they can learn how to write software, and they can write tomorrow's video games.
I heard actually they have a new version of this called the GIMP shop. It's a lot like Photoshop.
That's right. That's right.
And they have supported for both Mac and PC.
That's right. The GIMP shop is that's good. It can run if you don't want to put Linux on your computer, but you want to use open source software. People have made the GIMP. I've never used it.
Well, if a person uses Photoshop and they want to get, like, say, they use it at a lab or whatever, say, like, an artist uses that at the university's art department, they can't afford to buy $600 copy of Photoshop. They can use GIMP shop, and it's a lot easier to transfer the knowledge.
Excellent. Good show.
Has good editing on there too.
The only disadvantage I heard is it doesn't have CMYK output for, like, press, pre-press,
Yeah, I've been told that about about the GIMP, but then there is.
I don't know about GIMP shop, but I know GIMP has that problem. I don't know about GIMP shop.
I know they're working on that, but then there's another there's another drawing program that you can use that has CMYK output. But how am I going to find that out? How am I going to install it on my computer even if I learn about that smooth transition? We use a package manager. So one of the things I've done is I've clicked System, Administration, Synaptic Package Manager. This is how I keep my computer in touch with this neural network of other servers and software updates. So I load the Synaptic Package Manager. Now I'm going to click on repositories because I want to be able to have access to everything. And I'll notice that by default, not all of my repositories are enabled. The universe, community maintained packages, and the source. Backports, and the source. Universal security updates, and source. So I can do that, and I can click close. And my package manager will say, hey, your repositories have changed. The number of computers that I'm querying to see what's available versus what you have has changed. So you should update that. So click reload, please. So now I click reload. And so now my package manager is querying all these different servers. They're all HTTP sites that have lists of available packages. And it's pulling them down and creating a list for me of available things that I can install. So how do I go about doing that? I can either come over here and on the left and click and see what I can install that's amateur radio related. I've got a lot of ham operators for these islands. And just take a quick look at all these different programs that I can install if I'm a ham operator. What is clog? Well, this package provides a ham radio logging program for KDE. Of course, logging no. Okay. If you know what that is and you want to do it, you can install it. How do you install it? You click it, mark it for installation, and you install it. What if you're interested in something? CMYK. What packages out there can I use that have, that they can have CMYK output? Oh, Scribus. An open source desktop page layout program with the aim of producing commercial grade output in PDF and PostScript, primarily though not exclusive for Linux. Oh, I want to.
What is it? Something like it's always cameras. Like files that can't be opened.
We'll open it up.
Or like proprietary binary files, like even damaged documents can be encoded with a synthesizer.
How about that?
So you can have a corrupted file and still be able to use it.
How do I install it? All right, click mark it for installation. It also needs this dependency, so I'll mark it for installation. The developmental branch, let's install that. What else should I search for?
Computer algebra systems.
Okay. Let's go to algebra. What could I install that's related to algebra? Atlas 33 now is the first algebra. No, that's not that. I know. Let's see. I know that there's a few games that are good for algebra.
Like something, like things like Mathematica, they're so expensive. Yeah, what do they think? What do you
Let's see.
Pocket, yeah, that's.
That's close to it?
Yeah, I've heard about it, but I haven't been able to.
You can look for anything, bookkeeping software.
Yeah. I know there's a fit on the top of my head, there's a few. There'll be, for instance, the groupware. Ledger. The SQL ledger.
You're right, it's choices on top of choices.
I just click that and up there and see that.
Now, if you're a beginner and you don't have much experience with a lot of the software, do they have actually a decent Linux distro review site of different software packages or?
I mean, there's a lot of sites that that offer reviews of everything.
Because when you said that there was a lot of those, it's kind of completely true.
Yeah, and that's literally where just a little time with Google can come into play. You can kind of hunt around to see. Now, what I did was I also, in addition to the package we set to install, I clicked Mark All Upgrades and I clicked Apply. So what's happening now is that the computer is downloading the programs it told it to install, but it's also downloading updates to all the packages that we've already installed. And this is important with the computer. You always want to keep things current and updated. So this is all fine and good because, you know, everyone has Athlon 1.5 gigahertz computer with a half gig of RAM and an 80 gig hard drive. So everybody in Hawaii could benefit from free software because we all have computers like that, except that we don't. Except that we don't. And except that we don't. So what's a way that we can better utilize e-waste? And what's a better way that we can put to work computers that are in the closet of every school and that in our cyclical and sick culture of upgrade, throw away, to buy newer, faster computers that add no value to the computing experience, especially in a web-enabled learning world. Most of the programs our Department of Education uses are web-based, yet, and as much as I love the DOE and want them to have all the money they need, they make me madder than a wet hen at their insistence on buying a P4 with a gig of RAM so that you can run web-based software. A Pentium 4 with a gig of RAM is 10 computers to me. How is that so? Well, one of the projects that exist in the world of the internet is a Linux terminal server project. And someone has chosen to distribute Fedora with the Linux terminal server project with a bunch of education applications so that you can take that Pentium 4 with a gig of RAM that's in too many classrooms and you can install it into a Pentium 4 with 2 network cards. And then you can connect a faster computer through a commoditized network switch. I have 50 of these. My friend Nam Vu was shocked at that. When he upgrades, Nam calls me and he gives me his old stuff. So I've got countless switches like this. I've got miles of commoditized network cable. And we all have too many Pentium 1s. Now what happens when you connect them? What can you do with that? Is it possible that you can make this previously discarded Pentium 1 computer, boot through the network off of a faster computer? And that's a rhetorical question, and the answer is yes. So there are 3 things that HOSEF can do with computers that come to me. They come in 3 categories. The slower, pretty much 400 megahertz and slower computer, I can make into what I call a thin client, where I network it through a commoditized network cable and switch to a fast computer. If it's maybe between 300 megahertz and 800 megahertz, I make it a standalone workstation. I run it through our Computer Guts program. I teach kids how to build it, they take it home and they keep it. Maybe I'll ship it to Cambodia. Maybe I'll put 50 of them in a container and they go to the Philippines, like we've got a bunch doing next week. If it's 800 megahertz for faster, I'm going to make it into a server. Because then I can take this 1.5 gigahertz box and add a little more RAM to it and run 5 or 10 computers off of it. Because not everybody has this. Or more importantly, not every computer administrator, or in the DOE, they're called a tech coordinator. And you can, here's my one little political statement. We can talk all we want about innovation and science and technology in our schools. But until each of you understand that at the DOE level, the computer person is some poor teacher who maybe volunteered or maybe got nudged into becoming the tech coordinator. They're still a teacher, they still have to teach a class or two, but now they're responsible for all your computers. So I got a class to teach, and I got ESIS is rolling out. I got the statewide student information system I got to be, make sure that it's running. And we just bought all these new computers to run ESIS, so I got to make sure you got it. But hey, now you want computers in your classroom too. But see, my workday ends when your workday ends, and I'm overwhelmed. So until we, at the state level, have a dedicated education technologist to support state-mandated applications, and have a tech coordinator who really only has to take care of helping you as a teacher integrate technology, we can sound as good as we want to sound about doing all these great things for schools. We put our principals and our teachers behind the 8 ball by making this poor person called a tech coordinator the single source for all support and innovation. And it's hard to get and it's hard to grasp, and it's a shame. There's lots of factors, but nothing will ever really happen until that changes. But if you're a tech coordinator and you got to manage a computer lab and you're an overburdened system administrator in a small business, what's easier? To install an application 20 times over on 20 different workstations in a computer lab, or to have one server powering 20 clients, and now you just have one computer to install your software on. One computer to upgrade. That's the model that I'm going to show you now. I didn't bring my KVM like you usually do, so what I'm going to do is borrow, we'll come back to this. What you can see is happening is that it's downloaded it just downloaded 250 megabytes of packages. I just wish I had this kind of bandwidth in my house, but I just don't. And it's updating them and updating all the packages that are on this computer, and we'll come back and we'll say goodbye to it in a few minutes. But in the meantime, I'm going to boot this computer. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. And then I'm going to move my VGA cable over to this computer, and I'm going to show you how this computer can load this computer's software faster than any computer that you can go buy right now. So, plug in the VGA cable. Plug in the mouse. Plug in the keyboard. Plug in power. Turn it on. This was donated to HOSEF. Actually, I think that this is the one I remember as being, this is one that was being brought to the CompUSA recycling day that fortunately the state put an end to because it just was one big throwaway day. And if everyone would come and drop off their computers and say, good for me, I recycled it, people like me that stayed around for the day would then fill up the big yellow trash trucks. And they would just take them all out in the gulch and they'd dump them. But the Department of Health got on to that, so now businesses cannot throw away their personal computers. But you still can. You as a home user can go put your computer, put your monitor into your what is it? What are they? Gray trash can. You just throw it away. It's a shame, but it's what it is. There's solutions to that, but it's what it is. I do not try to get in the way of that. So I'm booting up this computer. It's already installed. It's installed with a distribution called the K-12 LTSP. It's Linux, it's all the programs you like, it's education programs, and a few special settings that tell this computer to be a firewall, to be a router, and to share its programs through the network cable to a discarded computer. So it runs, it runs, it runs, it boots up, synchronizes. I log in, and I show you that it's got software pretty similar to what you saw before, laid out a little differently, but a lot more education applications. And this distribution of GNU Linux takes a fun approach to education. The menu that addresses education here is called Edutainment. And you've got all these very, very amazing, it's got what you had before and then some. Things like Tux Math. I like Tux Math. So now it's you against gravity when it comes time to do some math. Because the numbers are coming down. That must be 2, all right. Must be 12, all right. Okay, so now, hey, I'm having fun learning. I don't like math, I hate math. I'm not about to get beat, right? I'm not gonna let the thing land on my faces. So, right? So you trick kids into learning. This one isn't as much fun, but you're a teacher and you want your kids to work on fractions, and you got them in the computer lab, and they all launch KBrush, and so hey, we're going to do our fraction tasks, and so we all have to go through, we all have to do our fractions. And you know, let everybody work on their own, you're not as intimidated, you're not working on the team if you're still trying to teach yourself, and you can say, this is 0. Right. So, and then you can, all of a sudden, you're having to come up with the common denominator, and you're having to do your numerator work, and you're having to do fractional work. And the teacher can come back and see, okay, how is Scott doing? You know, he's done 6 so far. How's he doing? Things like KTurtle. This is where you learn basic programming skills. I don't know how to program. But there's some way that you can learn to go through and some way I can tell you to go ahead and do an example for me. So there's some code here, and you can go through and run this code, and then all of a sudden, the turtle will do something. Now I've probably convinced myself in my little world that I'm too old and not smart enough to figure this out, but that doesn't matter for a kid. You know, they're going to look at this and learn and look and learn, and if you get a teacher that's got some skills, they can impart this knowledge to them. So this is all great, because we all have, we kind of do, but we probably have more Pentium 4s with a gig of RAM than we need in our schools. But we still need to be able to have more access. So how do you get to a 2-to-1 computer ratio in the Department of Education without spending more money? Take this stuff that you're throwing away every day, and you connect it to this, because you got one too many of them on your campus already, and you have students run off of this computer. So let me show you how that can work. The older computer needs to know, hey, I'm not going to run off of my hard drive. I need to go and run off of a faster computer that's on the network. And so some computers have what's called a PXE, the pre-execution environment, enabled network card. And so it just knows that when it turns on to go look through the network to the faster computer. But if not, you can use what's called a universal boot floppy. This is just a regular old floppy, you put a little image on it, and it tells this network card to use the network to go look for its operating system. So, log out. Before the principal decided to pull them out because it was easier to talk about not having any money by spending money, I had a bunch of these. So we do have thin client labs all across the island. Trujillo Elementary, Coneola Elementary, Kailua Intermediate.
But that Pentium 1 doesn't even have a hard drive, does it?
Does not. There's no hard drive in here right now. The floppy and the CD. What's that? Well, it's about to. So right now we're on this guy here. Why don't you log up? So I'm going to disconnect my monitor cable, disconnect my keyboard, and connect my monitor cable to this previously discarded Penny 1 computer. I'm going to connect this keyboard to it, plug in this power cable. I forgot to bring my mouse, and so this does not have a USB port. Bill found a USB mouse for me, but I can't plug it in here. So I'm going to be able to log in, but I'm not going to be able to click around. So as long as I have you plugged into the right port, and you plugged into the right port, this will boot off of my other computers, I think, if I remember correctly. Let me do this real quick. Make sure I didn't pause what was running here when I started to think. Tried to turn it off, maybe try to shut it down.